Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Labor Live at 12:05. My name is Alex Jorgensen. I'm the Deputy Political Director here at the Alaska AFL-CIO. And today we have a little bit of a special episode because I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but tomorrow is a very important holiday. A holiday you might not know a lot about. A holiday you might know everything about because you're a real champion of labor. But that's what today's episode is all about. And with us to discuss May Day, what is it, why it's important, and how you can celebrate is our political director, Kim Hayes. Kim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Happy to be here. I feel like I'm now not just a guest, but a recurring guest, like on a sitcom.
You've moved beyond the featuring. You have your name in the regular credits.
That's right. My name in lights.
Which is always great. But obviously, when we think of workers in the United States, we always think of September, the first Monday in September, Labor Day. Everyone's going out, a nice weekend. They're getting the grill out, right? But we know that that's not really when the rest of the world celebrates. And so I was wondering, if you could tell us a little bit about May Day specifically and how it's related to workers.
Absolutely. And you're right. Here in the U.S., if you were, born in the last 100 years, Labor Day is the first Monday in September. Everybody's grilling, relaxing. Maybe you're not thinking of workers. You're thinking of not doing any labor that day. But to your point, tomorrow is May Day, May 1st. And the rest of the world is still celebrating it as a day to celebrate workers. And so did we. And actually, originally, May Day did originate in the United States. So back in 1884, back in the 1800s, the organization that we now call the AFL-CIO set a date in the future. They said on May 1st, 1886, we are calling a general strike. So, back then you had to really set dates far ahead because you had to get the word out in a very old style. And so they were organizing for an 8-hour workday, which is really nice that they started that work back then because a lot of us get to enjoy that now. 340,000 workers followed through, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
And, by, 1880 standards, right? Like this isn't like current day U.S. population, 340,000. This is back when our population was
absolutely
a third the size that it is maybe today.
So an amazing thing to witness. Wow. There's photographs of these events. So what happened is on that date, a lot of labor activists and some anarchists in Chicago began a multi-day strike. And it was eventually named the Haymarket Affair of 1886. And by the third day, May 3rd, protests started to turn violent. Police began attacking the workers that were protesting and striking that day near a plant. The next day on May 4th, a meeting was held in Haymarket Square and it got really bloody. And again, police intervened, there were clashes, and then a bomb exploded in the region. So a lot of controversy about that. Who was the bomb meant for? But at the end of the day, we do remember the Haymarket Affair when we're talking about May Day. The news of that explosion made it across the globe. So by 1889, it was International Workers' Day, not just U.S. Workers' Day. A lot of workers were killed in those protests. So, starting in 1889, everybody was enjoying International Workers' Day on May 1st. But during the Cold War here in the United States, the feeling at the time was it was associated with communism. And we know how he felt about communism during the Cold War. And so President Eisenhower pushed to move Labor Day in America to a much further date so that we were not associated with that International Workers' Day. Now, I will say that's not cut and dry. A lot of labor historians and current labor activists feel like it was much more about separating American workers from the growing power of workers in other countries. We see their labor movements in Europe and other places, they're really strong. And potentially it could have been an effort to separate us and divide us from those international workers. And so they're all celebrating May Day, and we have our own special thing in the United States back in September. So an interesting history of May Day.
Yeah. And, I don't want to use the word like comical history because it's not comical, what happened at that event. It meant workers died. Workers were literally giving their lives for the broader movement of, fighting for an 8-hour workday. And there's nothing funny about that. But the funny part being we did something here. We recognized that America basically championed Workers' Day. Basically, yes. The whole world went, that's great. We love it. We will also join in. And then we said, whoa. Yes. Actually, we're going to do it on a completely different month.
I know. That's the history. And so, as a kids in high school, we didn't learn about May Day, right? That wasn't something. And so that was also kind of part and parcel about kind of putting it to the back of the history book.
But I think there's been some good news in the sense that, I think in the last couple of years, we've seen a huge resurgence in the American labor movement. We've seen young workers get more and more, up in arms about, fighting for their rights in the job, fighting for the right to organize. And there's kind of been maybe like a resurgence of, man, maybe we will celebrate May Day, and May Day should be the day that we should celebrate. So could you maybe kind of talk a little bit about this like resurgence in the labor movement that's kind of circling around May Day?
Absolutely. We're seeing that resurgence. One, we know that younger and younger people really want unions. So that's just one thing we're seeing kind of tangentially, is that younger people who are having a harder time accessing unions are saying, I want a union in my workplace. And they're having that realization of how the system is rigged. So that's kind of helping it. But also we're seeing workers uniting on May Day again because of the blatant attacks on working people with the current presidential administration. They're ending collective bargaining of federal workers by executive order, dismantling the National Labor Relations Board, the Department of Education, deporting union members, attempting to deport citizens once in a while, attacking universities, defunding Medicaid, and all the while, billionaires are getting richer by the second. And so this sounds a lot like kind of what happened at the turn of the century, right? Robber barons, we all know that history. And so it's kind of that history repeating itself. People are feeling the inequality. Our buying power is diminishing, and yet we have more billionaires than ever on the globe. And so we're noticing that all these rights that we secured, feels like back in the day, are being taken away. And so naturally, people are paying attention closer, and we're going kind of back to the roots of solidarity and getting back to global solidarity as workers.
You got to love it, because solidarity is the bread and butter of our movement. It's the bread and butter of what powers workers to ask for better wages, to ask for safer working conditions, and to secure better contracts. So I know there's probably a lot of workers out there watching right now going, oh, shoot, I didn't know May Day was a thing, and it's tomorrow. And I know we're not currently having a large scale event like we have had in previous years in town, but what are some ways that people can kind of celebrate on their own, the importance of May Day and the importance of unions?
Absolutely. There's lots of things you can do to either educate yourself about what's going on or just do your part to make the world a better place for workers. First of all, if you are in a union, make sure you're telling people about all the benefits you get from unionizing. If you're not in a union, I'd really encourage you to research what it means to unionize your workplace. You can visit our website, Alex. What's our website to learn more about unionizing?
Unionizeak.org. www.unionizeak.org. Look it up. Google it. You're going to find it. It's got all the information you need on how to form a union in your workplace.
And I think Alex and I know this all the time. We have a lot of friends that just don't understand what it would mean to be in a union. Either they hear myths from a long time ago, or they just don't know enough. So one of the best ways is to protect workers' rights is to have access to that union. So make sure you're doing your part to spread the word about how unions level the playing field for working people. Another thing we can all be doing is getting ready to vote in local and state elections. The best way we can flex our power as working people, union, non-union, doesn't matter, is by going to the ballot box. We, time and time again, our rights are on the ballot in one way or the other, right? Either because the people we're electing get to the halls of power and want to take our rights away, or they want to make sure they protect them or expand them. And so make sure you're researching the candidates you're going to be voting for at your local election all the way up to the federal election. And make sure you're voting for people who are going to protect workers. Right now, as we speak, there are lots of bills in the Alaska legislature that aim to either protect workers or hurt workers. And so paying attention to those things. There's a pension for public employees. I don't know if folks know this, but for the last 20 plus years, our public employees don't have access to defined benefits, unlike the rest of the United States that would at least have an option to have a defined benefit. Hurting working people. We should be able to retire with dignity. We have bills talking about paid family leave. Can you imagine if we had what they have in other countries where you get to stay home with your family and not go hungry? That'd be nice. We have capital budgets, right? That puts our people to work in our state so they can build the future of our state. We have a public education funding crisis. All of these things in the legislature that we're watching affect working families. And so if you're interested in engaging on any of those issues, take some time on May Day to go to akledge.gov and look up a topic and see what kind of things are happening there. Any way that you want to engage will help workers. That's all I have to say is at the end of the day, work connects us all. We know that in every which way someone is a worker. And so either talking about your work environment or the union, talking about the election with people, or paying attention to the legislature are all ways to kind of engage in May Day activities by talking about working people and how we have these rights that we really want to protect.
Well, thank you for sharing, Kim, on those incredible ideas. I could not agree more. The best way to celebrate May Day, the best way to celebrate International Worker Solidarity is to build power. And the only way to build power is to get involved. Because I really don't know who actually said this quote. It's one of those quotes that's really thrown around all the time. But, when you're not, at the table, you're on the menu. And that's exactly what labor goes through every single year. And when you're not involved, you're at risk of losing things that your forefathers, our forefathers in the labor movement fought for, and many of them who died for, right? So Labor Day is an incredible, or not Labor Day.
It is Labor Day for the whole world.
There's the American education coming out. May Day is so important. And, I think we're just excited that hopefully you all can get out and get involved in your local unions on May Day.
Absolutely. Yes. Everybody enjoy your May Day. The other interesting tradition that they have in Europe is on May Day, just like we do on our Labor Day, where you sit back and relax. On May Day, a lot of people like to sit around the fire and talk with their friends and have a drink and just be together in solidarity. So I hope everybody has a wonderful May Day this year.
I love it. I'm excited. I'm excited to celebrate. I'll tell you that. Well, Kim, as always, thank you for being a distinguished guest on the Labor Live at 1205 program. And yeah, we look forward to, I'm sure, having you on in the next couple of weeks as the legislative session kind of comes down to a very probably turbulent and chaotic end, as it always does.
Per usual. Thank you again, Alex, for having me.
Well, folks, that is it for today's episode of Labor Live at 1205. Make sure to join us next time as we cover more topics and how they impact Alaska's working